Hello! Welcome back, or if you're new, welcome. I just realized I have never introduced myself. Hi, my name's Katie. I love true crime. I'm also a makeup artist. Yeah, I will be a mortician. Can't wait. I know, very fitting, right? So today, I want to talk about one of my favorite cases. This is one of my favorite dudes, okay? It sounds weird, but it's very fascinating to me. This dude is hella creative, okay? I'm sure most of you have seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Psycho, Silence of the Lambs. Well, today we are going to be talking about the person who inspired characters in all of those films. That's right, Ed Mother Effin Gein. You guys can't even tell me he's not creative. Like, he's so creative. What he did was fucked up, don't get me wrong. But, like, who thinks I'm gonna make a nipple belt? He could have been freaking next Gucci Couture or Louis Vuitton, you know? He could have been Ed Gein. But he fucked that one up. He dropped that ball. So, let's get into it. Edward Theodore Gein was born on August 27th, 1906 in La Crosse, Wisconsin, to George and Augusta Gein. Ed also had an older brother named Henry. It was said that Ed's mother, Augusta, was extremely religious and frequently told her sons that all women were basically the devil, except for her, of course. This made Ed idolize his mother, and he ultimately became obsessed with her. Augusta and her husband George didn't seem to have a very good relationship. It was said that she hated him and thought he was worthless. So that's nice. He was an alcoholic who was unable to keep a job. He worked as a carpenter, tanner, and insurance salesman. So I actually had to look up what a tanner was because when I think of tanner, I think of like a man. That's like a dude's name, right? So if you don't know, a tanner is someone who transforms animal hides and skins into leather, which is, I didn't realize that was a job. But it makes sense, right? I don't know. That makes me sad. It doesn't matter. While the family was living in La Crosse, George owned a local grocery store, but soon sold the business and left the city to live on a 155-acre farm in the town of Plainfield, Wisconsin. This became their permanent residence. Augusta loved the isolation and took advantage of it by turning away outsiders who could have influenced her sons. Ed was only allowed to leave the farm to attend school. Outside of school, he spent most of his time doing chores on the farm. Ed was said to be very shy. Classmates and teachers remembered him having very strange mannerisms. Apparently, he would just randomly start laughing as if he was laughing at his own jokes. And I mean, I do that shit all the time, but I'm not out here like making nipple belts. Anyways, it was said that Ed would come home from school crying because kids were making fun of him and his dad would repeatedly beat him until his ears started to ring. Augusta would punish Ed whenever he tried to make friends, and by 8th grade, he had dropped out of school. Despite him having poor social development, it was said that Ed did fairly well in school, particularly reading. On August 1st, 1940, Ed's father died of heart failure at the age of 66. Ed and his brother Henry began doing odd jobs around town to help cover living expenses. The brothers were always considered to be reliable and honest towards people around the small town. While both the boys worked as handymen, Ed also frequently babysat for neighbors, which is kind of creepy to think about now. He always said that he enjoyed babysitting because he seemed to relate more easily to children than adults. Henry began dating a divorced mother of two and planned to move in with her. He became worried about Ed's attachment to their mother and often would speak badly about Augusta to Ed, which really upset Ed because he was so obsessed with his mom. On May 16th, 1944, Ed and his brother Henry were burning marsh in the field on the property. The fire got out of control, so local firefighters had gone to the property to extinguish the fire, By the end of the day, the fire was out, but Ed couldn't find his brother Henry. A search party got together to help look for Henry. When police arrived, Ed had led them right to Henry's body, who was laying face down in a field on the property, which is pretty suspicious that he knew exactly, like he couldn't find his brother, and then all of a sudden police get there and he's like, oh, here he is, found him. It was said that by the time they had found Henry, he had been dead for quite some time, and it appeared he did not die due to the fire. Many people actually believed that Ed had killed Henry due to Henry hating their mother, but police did not believe that Ed was capable of killing someone. You guys are wrong about that one, huh? I don't know if these police are still alive, but they're probably looking back like, damn, we fucked up. They had determined that Henry had died from heart failure, but it was later reported that Henry had bruising on his head. Police dismissed the possibility of foul play. The coroner later officially listed asphyxiation as the cause of death. The authorities accepted the accident theory, but no official investigation was conducted, and an autopsy was not performed on Henry. With Henry gone, Ed and Augusta were now alone. Augusta had a paralyzing stroke shortly after Henry's death, and Ed devoted himself to taking care of her. I'm going to give a little trigger warning here. There is some animal cruelty. I hate talking about this kind of stuff, but I feel that this is important when it comes to how Ed's mother is, okay? So, just a warning. Ed had said that sometime in 1945, he and his mother visited a man named Smith who lived nearby to purchase straw. According to Ed, Augusta witnessed Smith beating a dog. A woman inside the Smith residence came outside and yelled for him to stop, but Smith beat the dog to death. Sick motherfucker. Augusta was extremely upset by this scene, not because she watched a dog be beaten to death, but because of the presence of the woman. Do you see why I wanted to add this in there? Like, you watched a dog be beat to death and you're not concerned about that, you're concerned about a woman on the property? Augusta told Ed that the woman was not married to Smith and she had no business being there, and angrily called her, quote, Smith's harlot. So yeah, she had some weird hatred towards women, if I do say so myself. Augusta had a second stroke soon after, and her health deteriorated rapidly. She ended up dying on December 29th, 1945, at the age of 67, and Ed was devastated by her death. Ed held on to the farm and continued to earn money from odd jobs. He boarded up rooms used by his mother, including the upstairs, downstairs parlor, and living room, leaving them all untouched, while the rest of the house became disgusting, almost hoarder-like. Ed lived in a small room next to the kitchen. Around this time, he became interested in reading pulp magazines and adventure stories, particularly those involving cannibals. Why were there even magazines about cannibals, involving cannibals? Why are these... This is why these people exist, because some weird motherfucker is like, I'm gonna write a story about eating a human. And then these mentally ill people are like, oh, that sounds good. That sounds delicious. It just takes one sick person to write a story about another sick person, and then a sick person reads this sick story, and yeah, gives them ideas. Stop writing gross stories. On the morning of November 16th, 1957, 58-year-old Plainfield hardware store owner Bernice Warden disappeared. The hardware store's truck was seen leaving out from the rear of the building around 9:30 a.m. that morning. Bernice's son, Frank, who was a sheriff in town, entered the store around 5 p.m. to find the cash register open and blood stains on the floor. Frank told investigators that on the evening before his mother's disappearance, Mr. Ed Gein had been in the store and was expected to return the next morning for a gallon of antifreeze. A receipt for the antifreeze was the last receipt written by Bernice on the morning she disappeared. That evening, Ed was arrested at a Plainfield grocery store, and the sheriff's department went to search Ed's farm. And what they found there, you don't want to know, but I'm going to tell you. A sheriff discovered Bernice's decapitated body in a shed on Ed's property, hung upside down by her legs with a crossbar at her ankles, and her wrists were tied together with rope. She was split open from vajayjay to sternum and, quote, gutted like a deer. Could you imagine walking into that scene? You're like, oh, cute little Ed, he wouldn't do anything. And then you walk into that and you're like, the fuck? She had been shot with a .22 caliber rifle, and it was determined that the mutilations were made after she had already been dead. Searching the house, authorities found, get ready, human bones and fragments, a wastebasket made of human skin covering several chairs, skulls on his bedpost, female skulls, some of them with the tops sawn off, bowls made of human skulls, a corset made from a female torso skinned from shoulders to waist, leggings made from human leg skin, masks made from the skin of female heads, Mary Hogan's face mask in a paper bag, Mary Hogan's skull in a box, Bernice Warden's entire head in a burlap sack, Bernice Warden's heart in a plastic bag, 9 vulvas in a shoebox, a belt made from female nipples, 4 noses, a pair of lips on window shade drawstrings, and a lamp made from the skin of a human face. So there was quite a bit that they found. When questioned, Ed told investigators that between 1947 and 1952, he had made as many as 40 visits to 3 local graveyards to exhume recently buried bodies while he was in a, quote, daze-like state. On about 30 of those visits, he said that he came out of the daze while in the cemetery, left the grave in good order, and returned home empty-handed. On the other occasions, he dug up the graves of recently buried middle-aged women he thought resembled his mother and took the bodies home. Ed admitted to stealing from 9 graves and led investigators to their locations. He would rob the graves soon after the funerals while the graves were not completed. That way, it wasn't obvious that someone had just dug up a random grave. Like, it was not, fully covered and stuff. So no one would have really known, if that makes sense. It didn't look suspicious. Soon after his mother's death, Ed began to create a, quote, woman's suit so that he would become his mother. He denied having sex with the bodies, saying that they smelled too bad. Gein also admitted to shooting 51-year-old Mary Hogan, a tavern owner who had been missing since December 8, 1954. Her head was found in the house, but he later denied memories of the details of her death. In addition to the murders of Mary Hogan and Bernice Warden, Ed was also considered a suspect in several other unsolved cases in Wisconsin. In November 1957, authorities confronted Ed with a list of missing persons cases that had occurred between the death of his mother and Bernice. However, lie detector tests seemingly exonerated Ed of any other murders, and his psychiatrists concluded that his violence was only directed to women who physically resembled his mother. On November 21st, 1957, Ed was arraigned on 1 count of first-degree murder, where he pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia and found mentally incompetent, unfit for trial. He was sent to the Central State Hospital for Criminally Insane, now the Dodge Correctional Institution, which weirdly is where all the other cases I've done are, like, those people are at the Dodge Correctional Institution. Guess who else is there? Chris Watts. We'll talk about that one. Don't worry. A maximum security facility in Waupun, and later transferred to the Mendota State Hospital in Madison. In 1968, doctors determined Ed was, quote, mentally able to participate in his defense. The trial began on November 7th, 1968, and lasted for 1 week. A psychiatrist testified that Ed had told him that he didn't know whether the killing of Bernice Worden was intentional or accidental. Ed had told him that while he was looking at one of the guns at her store, the weapon discharged and killed Bernice. He said that he had not aimed the rifle at her and did not remember anything else that happened that morning. At the request of the defense, Ed's trial was held without a jury. Ed was found guilty by the judge on November 14th. A second trial dealt with Ed's sanity. The judge ruled Ed not guilty by reason of insanity and ordered him to be admitted to Central State Hospital for the criminally insane. Ed spent the rest of his life in a mental hospital. Ed's house and his 155-acre property were appraised for $4,700, which was equivalent to $50,000 in 2023. Could you imagine getting 155 acres for $50,000? Sold! His possessions were scheduled to be auctioned on March 30th, 1958. There were rumors that the house and the land might become a tourist attraction, but early in the morning on March 20th, 10 days before everything was supposed to be auctioned, the house was destroyed by a fire. Arson was suspected, but the cause of the fire was never officially determined. When Ed learned of the incident while in the mental hospital, he shrugged and said, quote, "Just as well." Ed's Ford sedan, which he used to haul the bodies of his victims, was sold at a public auction for $760, which was equivalent to $8,000 in 2023, to a carnival operator, Bunny Gibbons. Gibbons charged carnival goers 25 cents to see it. Ed died at the Mendota Mental Hospital Institution due to lung cancer on July 26, 1984, at the age of 77. Over the years, people would chip away pieces from his gravestone until the stone itself was stolen in 2000. It was recovered in June 2001 near Seattle, Washington, and was placed in storage at the Washara, don't quote me, County Sheriff's Department. Ed is buried between his parents and brother in the Plainfield Cemetery, and his gravesite is now unmarked. And that, my friends, is the story of Edward Gein. If you haven't watched any of the movies that I mentioned in the beginning, definitely check them out. They're pretty messed up. And I also saw that Netflix will be coming out with a new monster season about Ed Gein, which I'm super excited about because, well, they have the Jeffrey Dahmer one and then the Menendez brothers. The Jeffrey Dahmer one was so damn good. I got a story about him. Don't you worry. I didn't love the Menendez brothers one. Maybe I need to rewatch it. But this Ed Gein one, I feel like it's going to be so good. And I'm so excited. So, yeah. That is all for today. I guess if you want to tell me how you feel about this story, you can. It's obviously very well known, so I don't expect much, but it's a Wisconsin case, so we went through it. We had to go over it, and it's one of my favorites. So, anyways, so I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!